So next we will have Kiderlen. Eric has a BSc in Mechanical Engineering and a Master's in Industrial Admin. His areas of expertise are energy efficiency, solar, water heating, water circulation rates, fire safety and air quality. He supports and assesses ECSA candidates and serves as a mechanical engineering interviewer on the ECSA panel. Eric acted as the mechanical engineering coordinator at numerous engineering and efficiency CBUT conferences. He is also an editor of a series of water and building material handbooks. His hobbies include motorcycling, off-road driving, and volunteering as a hiking guide. Eric, thank you.
Right, that actually ties up to the very efficient presentation which we listened to just now from our colleague Dion. And ECSA, say, produced a website, but they prescribe in all sorts of fancy words the code of conduct and the code of practice and the training guidelines. They form part of the overall package. I have asked that you as students or as trainees should try and get your own code of practice printed out. It is available on the website. And I do hope some of you have looked at it. The code of practice is really what today is all about, and it is laid down as a requirement that you as a professional, particularly if you're in training for getting your registration, that you adhere to the code of practice. The training guidelines are more specific if you are doing a specific aspect of civil engineering, mechanical engineering, and there is a specific requirement, and I can think in my own mind of the mechatronics requirements for, let's call them hospital engineers, those electromechanical requirements to make hospital equipment function properly and function safely is laid down in training guidelines. So if you are wanting to register, you need to make sure that you develop the theme, what you've learned in terms of equipment and in terms of patient safety and operator safety. So these are just a few words. Can we have the next slide, please? Yeah. I take it that you are registered either as engineers in training or as even technicians in training. And how are you qualified relates to university degrees or TEV colleges or even a trade of some mechanical electrical sort. Can you have the next slide, please? Yeah. The professions which are directly involved and contact engineering activity are listed: architectural, built environments, engineering professions, various electrical, mechanical, civil, landscape architects, property people. I didn't know that one about property valuation, but it is affected, equally professional as for engineers. The Public Management Finance Act, PFMA, and then the quantity surveyors. So these are the professional people who have themselves got a code of practice and a code of conduct that you as engineer, either engineering training or acting engineer, need to be aware of, that dealing with these professions, there is a laid down code for them to act, how they should operate in the field out there. Can we get the next slide, please? Yeah. Now we talk about the professional conduct. What is professional conduct? We have perhaps detailed it in the previous speakers, but that's not the code of conduct, that's more the professional details. But the code of conduct is a professional must do all his work, a specified code of conduct. It simply means you shall apply your mind in a civilized manner. This must also be openly available, your code of conduct, for even your peers in your industry or in your company. So you need to behave professionally because your peers are legislators are required by the documents to ask questions. And It is also laid down that if you do things improperly, there is a prescribed method of inquiry. So there's no such thing as getting away in engineering, or the other disciplines for that matter, because in terms of professional conduct, a laid down method of inquiry is on the table. So if any of your clients, any of your customers, they can ask to have an inquiry done into your engineering work or your engineering activities. And that is just to liberate in both ways that, first of all, you don't have to worry if you work properly. And secondly, that no one can get at you by having very funny questions and very funny court cases and very funny non-related matters thrown your way, because it must follow, the inquiry must follow the professional prescribed method. And that's all very much part of professional conduct. So this shows you in which way the legislation that you're working under actually also helps and protects you to perform to the maximum. Can you have the next slide, please? This is what ECSA does. I'm supposed to do that. Registration, you all are in that process. Registration renewals and continuous professional development. I think Dion touched on that as well. You've got to, once you're into your career, continuously show the industry and the profession that you are developing and training and increasing your skills levels by attending CPD courses. And ECSA has actually allocated marks per CPD course, and they ask you on a per annum basis, how many CPD marks have you gained during that year, to prove to them that you are busy attending to your professional development. Then, if you want to present a course, ECSA will have to accredit your engineering presentation, your engineering programs, before they will say, right, this would do as a CPD course, and they'll give it 2 or 5 or however many points. Then the other issue which has come up recently quite a bit is recognition and valuation of qualifications. I was very much involved with that, and particularly after South Africa became 1994 a democratic country, we had lots of people from all sorts of areas, China one of them, and then Eastern Europe and so on, to apply to operate as professional engineers in South Africa. And then we found, by going through their qualifications, that some of them were actually very clever, but a lot of them also didn't really meet the requirements in all counts of professional engineering. And if I were to send some of those candidates onto one of Dion's presentations, they probably wouldn't make it. So we mustn't be vague about recognizing someone's value, but we also mustn't push where the value is not there, the inherent engineering value is not there, because it must be recognized and evaluated being a valid course. Then we've talked a little bit about professional conduct in the previous slide. So I think the defining and enforcing is that there is a legal way available for anybody who feels upset about your engineering activities to go via the Engineers Act, and even if they want to lay charges or whatever, it can be done. Then the last point on that ECSA, they identify what is engineering work. That is becoming a major issue right now with all the, shall I say, artificial intelligence, all the more electronic possibilities of doing engineering work. And the reason for that is because when ECSA core functions were drawn up, there was nowhere that amount of available, shall I say, electronic engineering methodologies were just not available at that time. So ECSA needs to clear in their mind where these electronic engineering methodologies can be made equal to the requirements for professionalism. And then the one that Stokes has defined fees, that is a perennial argument of discussion amongst consultants, clients and so on, but ECSA does have a laid down table of fees. As you can hear from this, that ECSA likes to have tables, and therefore you find your training programs are in tables and outcomes and so on, and even the fees are also in a little table somewhere. But that's a separate discussion altogether. Could we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and this is ECSA, what they do and how they keep active, or keep active. ECSA had a workshop, ECSA had a sub-office in Cape Town for about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, and they were doing this type of, presenting this type of workshop and so on. So if you are, obviously if you are registered and so on, you will have the opportunity to partake as a professional in these workshops, and you'll be able to assist ECSA applicants with training courses and guidance for them to get professionally registered. Now, the training programs, there are many, many training programs, and in previous times they used to be run by Telkom, they used to run by ESCOM, they were run by the railway people, and so on, to meet registration. As far as my knowledge goes now, these training programs are still in place and they are still recognized by ECSA, but I would have to say I don't know what value they are. Because remember, technology has made a quantum jump in the last 20 years or so, from basic analog to basic digital driven. So that needs to be looked at, the training programs. Then SAQA, South African Qualification Authorities, SAQA qualifications are applicable to NQF levels, that's just a level 6 or level 8. The SAQA does the practical assessment, the practical training, welding, bricklaying, etc., etc. So ECSA is aware of it, but you cannot apply to ECSA for any sort of qualification as a SAQA qualification. That does not give you automatic right to claim an ECSA qualification. Then there's societal and plant equipment issues, safety, particularly safety and pollution risks. Then the engineer's bottom line is what ECSA is also very strong on, which I personally agree. We first look at people, we then look at the plant that they have in order to produce whatever project, and then lastly we must look at doing it profitably. And then we've got the engineering code of practice, and that's done the 16th of March, that one is relevant. And then we've got various work practice areas in that government gazette, which is listed there on the screen. These are reference documents, these last 2 bullet points. If you have any snag, what is suggested that as part of the YPF activity, you identify your snag, approach your local YPF chairperson, and he or she can then give you guidance if that work practice is acceptable and can be submitted to ECSA in terms of your presentations. Can we look at the next slide, please? Oh, all right. Yeah. I did mention a CERACA. CERACA is the African Council for Air Conditioning and Refrigeration. I have some influence with them, and I have done work with them and for them. And they want engineering work to be signed off by ECSA practitioners, but they get it signed off by non-ECSA practitioners, so that is not valid as engineering requirement. However, it meets the Safety Act 85, 1993. Engineering work is done safely according to the OSH Act, that's the Department of Labor. Now, you will learn very quickly that the Department of Labor has particularly on site, got a final say-so if you're allowed to continue whatever engineering practice you're doing on that site or not doing. So you need to comply with the Department of Labor, and which is the guidelines, and they are condensed in Act 85, 1993. That's your, if you like, your safe work on site type situation. Now, as it so happens, you as engineer, because you are working on that site, you've been allocated that site, are legally responsible that even the non-ECSA people comply with the safety regulations. You can devolve that responsibility down to the site agent, and he can turn it down to whichever site engineer for that section of the work. What I'm trying to bring forward is the fact that a site is working under your general direction, makes you automatically, in terms of Act 85, responsible for that safety on that site to be maintained at all times and all processes. I think very few of the main contractors are aware, and you would have to push them for what's called a 16.1 and a 16.2 appointment, as well as a letter saying, look here, Joseph here, here's the engineer on this site putting up some turbine generators. You have to push for that to be done in writing. Because why, if you don't, you may end up in a situation where you're not protected by the law, not protected by the engineering legislation, and you may well be held liable in your personal capacity for why Joe Soap fell down the scaffold and broke his neck. So be aware that you always have the safety legislation cleared up and cleaned up when you're on that site. And that I can't prevail at, because particularly today where we have relative unskilled labor practices, laborers, the risk is tremendously more serious. But let's continue. Where we now? Code of practice, yeah, administration. Yeah. The code of practice, all right. We heard a lot about code of conduct from Dion, and I'm specifically more on the code of practice, which is a short form for legalese work. The legs of the code of practice, that's supposed to be proper engineering practice, is in safety, ethics, competency, and administration. You've got to keep record. By the way, on the administration one, just a bit of advice from my side, it helps tremendously if you keep your own log of what work you're doing, where and when. And it needn't be more than 3 or 4 lines, because you'll find in 10, 15 years' time, there comes a query, what happened to that pump suction valve? And then if you can go back to your notes, you can actually make a statement, so and so, such and such. But I would recommend that be done. I admit that I myself have not been always so good, but it is essential that you, in terms of your legal requirements, at least have some record in your own information system, what you did, where and when. And that's just plain common sense, but it's still part of good practice. Could we have the next slide, please? Yeah. The prescripts in the law, in these codes of practice, it's a lot of legalese, but the things to look out for is what must you do, what must you adhere to, what may you do, and what you may not do. And that's stages. So first stage is you must do such and so, and the second stage is you may not do this and that. So you can go through the code of practice, 7 or 8 pages, but that's all on the ECSA website. So make sure you pick up the must do and pick up the may not do. And just to give you the strength, if somebody instructs you to do this and do that, and you are aware that it's not in the legal prescribed requirements, you either need a separate written instruction for that task, or you refuse to do the task. And you have admitted that you're not prepared to do this, such and so, due to the safety or the health or the processes and so on. But if you don't minute it and something does go wrong, remember the whole world is waiting to jump onto you as engineer like vultures. and you need to protect yourself. And you protect yourself by using the laws that are there and your common sense in good engineering design. Right, let's look at the last slide, please. Can we change to the last slide, please? Is it the last slide? It's the last slide. Apologies. All right, I think I've really said what I wanted to say. You're welcome to put through any questions, either directly now or even later on via email. Work via Georgina, because she seems to be totally on top of all these requirements. And I wish you luck, but I tell you to apply your mind. Because luck only holds so much, but once your mind is applied, then you're secure. The law is there for you. Use it. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric, for that wonderful chat. And one of the things that I must note is that admin is hard, and it's definitely a tool that we need to use, because it becomes very time consuming when you're sitting and you're compiling your reports and you have to think about what you've done for the last 5 years. So I definitely agree with you on that one.